Donald Trump has committed to blocking stimulus funding to the post office because he's opposed to mail-in voting. He believes that mail-in voting would give Democrats an advantage, and he sees how poorly he's doing in the polls. And so he is single-handedly doing what he can to dismantle our democratic process and disenfranchise voters. Now, in a morning interview on Fox Business, he was actually very transparent about it. Take a look.
They want $3.5 billion for the mail-in votes. Okay, universal mail-in ballots. 3.5 trillion. They want $25 billion for the post office. Now they need that money in order to have the post office work, so it can take all of these millions and millions of ballots. Now, in the meantime, they aren't getting there. By the way, those are just 2 items. But if they don't get those 2 items, that means you can't have universal mail-in voting.
So as CNN accurately reported, Trump said that if the United States Postal Service does not receive the additional $25 billion funding request that Democrats included in the ongoing stimulus negotiations, then he believes the post office won't be able to handle the influx of mail-in ballots in the upcoming election. So where does the $25 billion figure come from? Is it something that Democrats unilaterally tried to include in the stimulus bill? Well, actually, no. Nancy Pelosi clarified that, quote, the legislation we have $25 billion, in the legislation we have $25 billion. That is the number that is recommended by the Board of Governors of the United States Postal Service, a bipartisan board of governors, 100% appointed by Donald Trump. They recommended $25 billion. And right now on social media, Twitter in particular, there are images going around showing trucks picking up Postal Service drop boxes where people would be able to drop off their mail-in ballots. Now, I wanna look into that a little further to make sure that that's actually something that's been directed by Donald Trump. But I will say this. Back in June, the Trump administration sued the state of Pennsylvania because they expanded voters' ability to vote by mail. So he has been on a warpath when it comes to mail-in voting. We've been talking about it from the beginning. So it is not far-fetched for the Trump administration to go even further when it comes to making it difficult for people to vote, especially in the middle of a pandemic when most people are probably gonna feel uncomfortable voting in person. And if that isn't enough evidence for you, I do wanna go to his chief economic advisor, who didn't really hide the fact that they do not care about protecting our democracy. Take a look.
So much of the Democratic asks are really liberal left wish lists. We don't want to have voting rights and aid to aliens and so forth. That's not our game, and the president can't accept that kind of deal.
And Cenk, as you know, Trump is doing what he can to dismantle the post office through who is now the new Postmaster General, a man who has outside interests, moneyed interests, investments in other delivery services, for instance, and who has already taken actions in reshuffling employees at the Postal Service around, thus complicating the ability for the Postal Service to do its job when it comes to the general election.
The Trump administration continues to be amazing for saying the quiet things out loud. So let's start with Kudlow. He said voting rights, that's not our thing.
It's amazing.
It's amazing, it is. It's you're not supposed to say that out loud. He said it's a liberal left-wing wish list, including voting rights. No, voting rights is supposed to be for everybody. We're proud to be the people in the country that brought you democracy. Now, look, and that's overinflated and it's a little bit of American, hype, but you're at least supposed to pretend that you agree about the core founding principle of the country. They actively dislike democracy. And by the way, there's very good reason for this. And the mainstream media will never give you this analysis. Right now, the Republican Party is nearly at an end demographically. They have almost no chance of winning national elections. The Trump election was a minor miracle with one of the worst candidates in American history opposed to him. and he barely won by 78,000. I mean, he is getting clobbered right now in every category. And it's not just about Trump. Demographically speaking, Republicans have almost no chance of winning in the future. That is why they are now just saying, no, voting rights is bad, voting is bad, democracy is bad. We might not leave office even if we lose. So, because if you're going to be a minority party, they're saying we value our power more than we value the country. It's literally the most un-American thing you can do. Now we go to Trump. And Trump he just says it. He's like, oh, well, now if I give them the money, they're gonna have mail-in voting, and I don't want mail-in voting. Well, how the hell are we supposed to vote in the middle of coronavirus? And you know what they're gonna do? They're gonna have a huge number of ballots in Republican districts, voting booths. And in Democratic districts, especially in the cities, they're gonna pack everyone into tiny little rooms and say, oh, there's coronavirus, you can't go. Oh, we already eliminated your ability to do mail-in voting, haha. They're gonna try to cheat in every single way. And you have to aggressively call it out. And your allies in that effort are Kudlow and Trump, who just come out and say, yeah, we're against voting. We want to destroy the post office so that you can't safely vote. We want you to, if you do, you remember that old slogan, vote or die? It never made any sense, but in this case, vote and die is what they're saying. And it's sick. I
think the Trump administration really does highlight how weak our system of checks and balances is. Over 100 Democrats wrote a strongly worded letter about this. Okay, great. I mean, whatever. What? I mean, we might be dealing with, first of all, he's definitely an authoritarian. There's no question about it. He wants to just steal this election. And the response is, we are going to investigate the post office. Maybe we'll do one of those like hearings that we're so great at. And we're gonna write a strongly worded letter. Okay, great. And then what? That's not anything. So I think, unfortunately, we need to be prepared as voters, right? And I'm saying this for everyone, because if you think this is only gonna impact Democratic voters, you're wrong, right? So if you're one of the hate watchers of TYT, I urge you to do this as well. If you can, vote early. Do what you can to cast your ballot as early as possible. I know it's not necessarily an available method all throughout the country, but we do know that when it comes to mail-in voting, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, Oregon, Utah, Vermont, Washington, and DC are automatically sending voters mail-in ballots. Other states do require voters to opt in to vote early or require an excuse to vote absentee. So depending on where you are in the country, please look at what your local laws are when it comes to casting your ballot and do what you can to vote early. I mean, that's really the most important action that you can take as an individual, because honestly, if we're sitting around waiting for Congress to do what it's supposed to do and be a real check on executive power, I don't want to be pessimistic, but I feel like it's a giant waste of time at this point.
Okay, two other really important things in this regard. If you're wondering, so why are they doing it, right? If it's going to affect everyone equally. Well, number one, in any state where they have a Republican governor, it is not going to affect everyone equally. They will have far more voting booths in Republican areas, and they can control the mail to some degree. Once they get it, they can count it immediately. They can not count it immediately, et cetera. And so one of the games that they could do, which is what happened in the year 2000, is if it looks like, hey, if we delay the mail-in ballots in Wisconsin, Michigan, et cetera, but we've got Republican governors in Ohio and Florida, we can make it seem like Trump has a slight lead and then say the election's over and we shouldn't count anything else. That's literally what they did in the year 2000. It's not just Trump. Bush did it. The Supreme Court did it. And in 2000, as the journalist showed, if you counted all the ballots in Florida, Al Gore didn't just win the popular vote, he won the Electoral College. But they ended the election before they counted all the votes. So they already have a blueprint for how to do this. And so that's one of the things that they're contemplating for how to get away with it. And even if they can't get away with that, the other thing they want to do is delegitimize the election. Oh, well, they say Biden won, but it was mail-in ballots, so it doesn't really count. So either Trump will try to stay even though he lost, or even if he doesn't do that, he'll say for the rest of his life and the Republicans, it's illegitimate. Biden's an illegitimate president. We're not gonna let them pass any laws or do anything else like that. And they're gonna use that propaganda for the rest of the time. And so this is the sick Republican Party we're dealing with. For God's sake, media, do your job and call out the entire Republican Party for 100% participating in this obvious attempt to steal our democracy away from us.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.